Shoobity bop bop boop boop bow. Today we talked about death and music.
We sure did, Benny boy, and we also talked about how it can be very good for the grieving process and how it also can be very triggering.
So put on your dancing shoes because we're getting into death and music.
Let's talk about death, baby. Let's talk about grief and mourning. Is it argumental or existential? What's it mean to me? Let's talk about death.
Hi, I'm Benny Capal, and I'm a funeral professional.
And I'm Nicholas Capal, a psychologist.
Hey, Nick, let's talk about death.
Let's do it.
All right, Nick, Dr. Nick, we have a real fun one today. We're going to talk about death and music. Yeehaw!
Whoopee whoopee.
Let's talk about death and music. So first of all, let's talk about, just to get a little bit into it, our favorite death music.
Go ahead,
right?
Ben. What's your favorite?
So I was, while I was thinking about this podcast the other day, I was listening. I purposely put on the Black Parade by My Chemical Romance, which, if you haven't listened to it, it is amazing. It is incredible. Gerard Way just has a way of describing death perfectly. And I remember during the time that album came out, they had a huge following from people dying of cancer, because he brings up, in fact, one of the songs on there is Cancer. But he brings up this idea where there is power in dying. You can have power. It doesn't have to be powerless. You don't have to be alone. And he struggled, if I remember right, and Gerard, if you're listening to this, I apologize if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I remember at the time hearing that album for you was a lot to do with you fighting addiction as well. And I was really thinking how powerful that album was for people to listen to. I remember going to see them. I remember we seen them play for Blink, or open up for Blink-182, but I also got their like live DVD when they did specifically the whole album. And when you pan to the crowd, it is like all these people, and a lot of them were cancer. Like they had their head shaved, and you could tell, and you could tell because they had like IVs and stuff in them and I remember like some of them talking at the show like, this really helped me get through my chemo and all this. And I just thought how powerful music really is when it comes to death. And you hear that, we're into punk rock, and we hear that with a lot of like the emo and the punk rock and rock and roll, where for some people, the song might not even in theory have anything to do with death. But for this person that's struggling with, the loss of somebody or just the loss of themselves, find that this album like helps them get through that period.
Yeah, I think there's an empathizing with the lyrics, right? There's something in the lyrics that really brings healing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I also think, that's the important thing of music in general, right? Music has a very healing perspective to it. In therapy, music therapy is a really good way to, I find it really good to connect with teenagers. Writing songs, it's a very creative way to explore feelings. It doesn't have to be around grief and loss and death. It can be around divorce.
Oh,
or
Nick, but
like
it does.
that.
It has to only be around grief and death.
We are talking about death, but what I'm saying to you is that I think music can have a very healing part to the grieving process if you can find something that relates to your story, your subjective being. So that's a great album, Ben. I do really, really enjoy that album. I think for me, one of my favorite death albums, if you will, it's kind of a darker one. It's called Home, Like No Place Is There, and it's by the band Hotelier. And
Oh, you playing it now?
I guess
Okay,
I'm playing
there
it.
You go.
But for me, that album is a very dark way of explaining, the pain and struggle of suicidality and losing a friend, losing a loved one. And it, when you listen to that song, it almost, gives you the shivers or, the single tear, if you will, because it's so much pain. And I think that's the reality when you lose someone, that you are in pain. It might not be physical, but you are in so much emotional agony that, maybe the one way to release it is by screaming at the top of your lungs,
Right. Right.
and just getting it out. And I think that's the beautiful part about music, is it's a great venue to explore feelings and thoughts. And I also think through music and musicians, if the music is really, really powerful, it can really change the perspective of the world.
Absolutely, and I think it's another vehicle, right, to deal with grief and loss, right? It's a vehicle to lose yourself in and be able to separate yourself from yourself into this music, right? And let's be honest, music and death have been coinciding forever, right? People have been doing music forever. The Native Americans have had the dances, and they have the music, the instruments, and the chanting. You got Gregorian chants that have been done forever. You have every so-called, even silence can be a music in some way, form, or shape, right? And for me, right, so what I find is people, especially if they're not traditionally going to the church and they're having their funeral at the funeral home, they are bringing new music in. And I'm not necessarily saying new music like the top charts, right?
I mean, for some people that might hit home, though.
I mean, if it's it's Taylor Swift or nothing, right? I mean,
Right.
you're bringing in a good T Swift song, But no, I just joking aside, like a lot of songs that I come across a lot are Freebird. That comes a lot.
Knocking on Heaven's Door.
Knocking on Heaven's Door. There's I Did It My Way. Frank Sinatra's I Did It My Way is a huge one. A lot of people do. But I've had old doo-wop. I've had heavy metal-ish, but more like rock and roll, but it flirted. I have a lot of country. We live in a very, very country. So we get a lot of that southern slang in here.
You got to get that. You got to get it.
We'll get in there. Get
those coolers out.
Obviously, a lot of gospel stuff.
The Bush Light, the camo cans.
I can only imagine that has been overplayed here a lot, and it's a great song. I'm not pleased if you like that song. I'm just saying it comes across a lot.
But even spiritual religious music, a lot of people find comfort
Grace.
in that. Oh yeah.
But the problem
at the old wooden cross or whatever
rugged cross.
Oh, the rugged cross. Yeah.
But I find what's always the most challenging part about this is, right, a family will come in, they'll say, well, we want an old gospel song. And I'll be like, okay, I can get that for you, but how do you want that? Do you want that like as in like the church got like a choir singing it? Do you want Elvis? Because Elvis did all the old, and you have a lot of diehard Elvis fans, including myself. I love Elvis. But do you want Elvis? Some people don't like Elvis.
Maybe you just get the piano, the instrumental.
They just want Vince Gill. That's all they want is Vince Gill. Mr. Vincent Gill.
Or Kenny G, right?
Kenny G. Okay, they just want
He
that
rocks
sweet
it.
flute.
You know what I was thinking about this?
Or clarinet? What is it, flute? He's
when,
a flutist.
When we brought up the idea of doing death and music, I was thinking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and how that is basically a cemetery.
An entombment of music.
It is. It really is. I mean, you go and, like, Ben and I are big fans of the Ramones, and most of them, unfortunately, are gone. And to go there and see, the shirt that they wear,
Johnny
maybe
Ramone's
the bass that they
jacket,
broke, or and just, it's a great place for younger people to go see, the good old music and how it has influenced today's society.
The Ramones. So if anybody out there has anything Ramones and would like to send it to Let's Talk About Death, feel free to message us at letstalkaboutdeathpod@gmail.com, or any questions or just thoughts on music. Here's a thought, Nick. We're talking about the good stuff about music and death. I've also heard that a song will ruin somebody from then on because their representation of that song is death, right? So a lot of people will make like photo collage videos, and I've heard people say, I can't listen to that song anymore because all it reminds me of is my grandpa's funeral, right? So the song actually is a negative thing to that person, right?
And again, I think that's the power of music, right? It can bless souls, if you will, but I also think it can be very triggering. You know, if
Ooh.
you've lost someone to suicide and you hear one of these bands, you know, put out their experience or their thoughts on it, and it might sink too close to home.
I feel like a woman, Shania Twain.
Right.
You know,
I mean,
you hear that song, and
it
you
really
heard
brings back the boots.
it just.
No, but I mean, but jokes aside, I think for some people, you know, I've heard like even the album I mentioned, I know that for some people that's going to be too close to home.
Oh,
that's
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And maybe it's just time, and maybe it's just uncomfortable because it's been so fresh, and this is just basically tore off the Band-Aid or rubbed the scar the wrong way. But I also think if you can eventually maybe get back to that song and explore your own thoughts and emotions and feelings with it, it could be very beneficial. But also, it might be very traumatic.
And I found about songs, and even my educating myself with grief, right? Because Nick, we're out there learning as much as everybody else who's listening to this podcast. Realize Dr. Nick and I feel. And we feel very strongly. And when I listen to music sometimes, when I first listened to it, you know, when I was 13, I had really cool, you know, khaki pants, maybe some cargo.
Some Jinko
you know,
jeans.
Maybe I was sporting some spiky hair. Maybe I
yeah.
had one of those like American Eagle shell like necklaces.
Aqua Net. What was that? A hairspray back in the...
When I was
think it's still here.
listening to these songs about death, I liked them because it was a catchy melody, maybe a cool like solo or something, right? And as you get older and you experience more death or experience a situation where a musician talks about suicide, right? What's it, Jeremy? What's the Pearl Jam one? I think it's Jeremy, where he talks about his friend that died, right? I hope I'm not talking.
Or what, Nirvana, All Apologies, and I mean, there's
Yeah,
so many good
absolutely. So now you're
songs out there.
Now, as you get more mature, right, more wise to the world, you re-listen to these songs. It's almost like when you watch one of those like really well directed movies that you have to watch 6 times to really catch everything.
Oh yeah.
But it's like one of those things where if you re-listen to some of those songs, you might get a whole different experience. And I have, and I'm sure everybody has, been in a situation where the right song just comes up at the right time or the wrong time, however you want to look at that. That's your experience. But you start like crying, or you start like going into this own world, and sometimes you have to turn it off. Like I can't deal with that right now.
You know, it brings me up to Brick.
I don't want to walk
Brick.
into the bank and look like I just got out of a funeral, even though
Right, but like I was thinking about Brick.
But there's nothing wrong with
you know,
that.
Ben Folds' Brick. You know, about he's talking about an abortion, and I think as a kid that kind of went over my head.
Right.
Listening to that song, it just was a good song. You like
She's a brick.
and I'm drowning slow.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Ben Folds, if you're out there, please get a hold of us at Let's Talk About Death
Benjamin Folds.
podcast.com, and we would love to speak to you. But
he sure knows how to rock the ivory.
he really does. But again, that's the beauty of music, right? Is that maybe what you get out of a song the first time you hear it is totally different than the meaning you get out of it if you're mad or you're angry or frustrated or overwhelmed or depressed. I found that when I'm depressed, I really go to that mellow music, you know, the Pink Floyd, The Wall,
Perfect.
you know, that kind of stuff, and just kind of sit in it, right? And just be there with it, be present with it. But like if I'm on a happy day, maybe The Wall isn't for me, you know?
It might get you in a weird place. No, I 100% agree. Music is so incredible. And let's even talk about like lyrics, right? Just music itself. You can listen to, you know, soothing sounds, and they can put you in a meditative state, you know, or you may listen to, you know, like what do they say, Mozart? You can listen to Mozart and like you can almost get a better grade if you're like taking a
helps
test.
you focus.
Yeah, without even knowing, like it's a subconscious thing. So like music is so important, and absolutely when it comes to the death and the funeral process or the memorial service or even the party afterwards, right? Even if the family just has a get together at their pole barn, they're usually got some sort of music on, right? They got the Vince Gill playing. It's Vincent Gill. And
Ben, I got a good question for you. What would be one song that you have to have at your funeral?
That's a really good one. I really like "Hear You Me,"
Mhm.
Jimmy, good old Jimmy Eat World. I really like that song. I think it's very well done, and I really that's a good honor. Dr. Nick, what's a song you would want?
Billy Joel, "Only the Good Die Young."
Oh, wow.
I think.
I
that
mean,
has
William
to
Joel,
be-
Willie.
I think that has to be at my funeral, and I think a big part of that is I am a firm believer in humor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially coping with grief and loss or any uncomfortable feelings. So I hope that brings a smile to people's faces when they hear that. Like, really? Of course he's got Billy Joel at his funeral, and of course he does the "Only the Good Die Young," and I'll probably be 90, and it won't make any sense.
Right.
But it'll be hilarious.
Well, you're young
right?
at heart, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in reality, right? What is it? Once you turn 21, all the doctors out in the audience, the actual medical doctors are going to look at and laugh at this. But I think it's like after 21, your body slowly starts to decay. So you're literally dying after 21. It's reality.
I mean,
It's
really.
weird.
You're born to die. You're literally dying the day you were born.
Yeah, but I think up until a certain age, you're actually like growing. Like it's a living. And then there's a certain point
Dr.
where your
Nick.
body's like, well, we had fun with that. Now it's time to knees start to go and
here's I always have like families will bring in like certain records, right? They'll say, hey, for the visitation, because we have like standard. It's kind of it's like gospel elevator music is basically what it is. That's what you do for visitation. You want something, but you don't want something so where people can't because that's the other problem too.
I was going to ask you this. You know, like you hear this all the time from
am I a DJ?
No, but listen to
yes,
this.
Absolutely.
You hear this all the time for people that work in customer service and all that stuff, and they have to hear Christmas music from November 1st to February 10th or whatever. Do you think that elevator music gets to you?
No, actually, the elevator music doesn't get to me, but there are certain songs, and I don't want to get into it because probably like everybody who listens to this probably loves those like 3 songs. But there's a couple songs that like. They'll be like, hey, we were really thinking
I can only imagine.
For Grandma, we'd really like this song. And you could just, I'm like in the back of my head, like my body's like, please no. Please.
It's kind of like the
Can we switch?
Is it kind of like the father-daughter dance of Butterfly Kisses that
Nick?
everybody
all right,
feels
we're
about?
we're gonna throw this out. Dr. Nick and I do not like country. We're just not country boys, even though we were
like
born
Western.
in the country.
Let's be very clear about.
I like
this.
Johnny Cash and
Yeah.
Elvis Presley. That's where probably it lands. And I think Dr. Nick likes the Judds, but that's his best.
Well, I mean,
be.
a John Deere tractor.
I mean, sure.
I mean, come on,
Nick, no, maybe Dr. Nick thinks more tractors are sexy.
You know what? But that's a weird. You bring up a great story, though. I'm thinking about
story?
Yeah, in my mind, there's a narrative playing right now. The Judds. The reason why I love the Judds was because. And it's only like 2 songs. It's like Barry Manilow, my love for Barry Manilow. And it's this idea that I had some great times with my mom in the car, and she would listen to
John Deere
Barry
tractor.
Manilow, like Coco Cabana, and I write the songs, and then the Judds. It was I can't remember now. I have it. I can hear it playing in the back of my mind, but. It's weird because
John Deere
but
tractor.
when to go back to what you were saying, it's like so. Let's say you lose someone around Christmas. Does Christmas music become tainted?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it does.
Because for most people, or at least from my experience that I talk to, Christmas music kind of puts you in that fun-loving, warm feeling, right? You're
Right.
like, oh, everything's great and all that stuff.
Let's hear those sleigh bells ringling.
But you're right. I think music can also taint.
Oh yeah, and you're absolutely right. And can you imagine like if Christmas music really does turn you off, and then now they're trying to make Christmas music earlier and earlier? For me, I'm a Christmas nut. I like Christmas. I'll be honest about it. But like if Christmas was a really bad time for me, and then like. We're gonna start Christmas music on September 1st.
Well, it becomes
like,
it becomes like this Bronner situation where it's like every day's Christmas. Everybody, it's earlier and early. People are leaving their Christmas trees up all year long and stuff. And I wonder, if you lost someone, a loved one, or something around a holiday, and that holiday music, that like, here comes Frosty the Snowman, and you're like, I hate every minute of this right now. Thank you for reminding me, But I think that is what I'm talking about, the power of music and how that can be healing, but it also can be very traumatic and very triggering.
Mm. Yeah, when it comes to it, I'm just a stray cat strut. You know what I mean? Brian Setzer. All right. So now we go right into our Q&A session.
Q&A, everyone loves that Q&A.
All right. Dr. Nicholas Pickles Lemon Sprickles.
Hit me, Benny boy.
All right. This one, Memories.
All
Great
alone in my
podcast,
memories.
guys. I like this. It's already starting good. Great podcast, guys. Big fan of it. My grandpa was a huge fan of jazz music. He passed away about a year ago. Every time I listen to jazz music, I feel his presence. Do you have any experiences like this, Dr. Nick?
Absolutely. I was thinking back to my grandfather who passed away not too long ago. And I think we mentioned it already on the show, My Way by Frank Sinatra. Mm-hmm. Every time I hear that song now, I almost picture the slideshow going in front of me. And he really did live his life that way. He was a very strong, powerful man, and it brings a lot of good memories of him when I hear that song. So, yeah, that would be my experience with it. How about you, Benny boy?
Yeah, absolutely. I have experiences like that. There's songs that I listen to, or honestly, anytime I hear somebody playing a piano, which is super weird, I think of my great-grandmother, because she would play this piano, and it was probably a little out of tune, but she still rocked it. And every time I hear somebody, hit the keys, a specific piano that sounds like that, right? Not just like every organ. I'm not going to like baseball games.
So every piano that's out of tune, just a pin?
Just, if it's a drop D piano, if it's just got that, it sounds like, but yeah, absolutely. There's certain songs that I think everybody can relate to this. There's certain songs when you hear it, a person like flashes in your mind, right? I mean, I think of
Jets.
Phil Collins. I think of Papa Dave Capal, Phil Collins. What's the Tarzan?
I was going to say the
song?
Tarzan
What was that
soundtrack.
song? 'Cause you'll be in
God,
my
he used to blare that so
no
loud in the
matter
car.
what they
And
say,
he'd look back at
I'll be
you.
with you.
He'd look back at you like with approval, like you know this is
I'm gonna be honest. That was a sick song. I mean, I think he did the whole soundtrack for Tarzan.
It was not a bad
'Cause
soundtrack.
you'll be in my heart.
heart.
I'll be there always.
There was that twin moment.
There
All right,
we
Ben.
go.
What's the second question?
Favorite song? Well, my question is for Benny, so maybe you should,
Of course. All right, I'll switch this up. My question here is for Benny Boy Slim. As a funeral director, what is your most popular song used at a funeral? That's question one. So this is a double question. Also, what is your favorite song used at funerals?
Well, my favorite
Top
song.
3 playlist of most funerals. What is the 3
Oh
songs?
gosh. Okay. So, what's I brought him up a ton on this podcast, and I apologize. Vince Gill, if you are out there, you're amazing, but you are way overused in Ida, Michigan. So maybe you need to have a live show here in Ida, Michigan, please. But Vince Gill does, what is it? Is it Amazing Grace? It could be Amazing Grace. I may be wrong. One of the gospel songs he does, and he does a fantastic job. But I feel like every time it's a funeral in the funeral home, literally the family would go, we don't care about the rest of the 3 songs, but we really want Vincent Gill.
So do you have that like just already in the CD player?
So every time they're like
preloaded.
we don't know if we could find the CD. I'm like, don't worry, there's probably like 36 CDs.
Or they go,
here
I don't
with
know what
Vincent
songs,
Gill.
and you're like, well, we got Vince Gill. Oh yeah, Vince Gill.
But that one comes up a lot. Another one is Elvis. Anything Elvis that has to do with gospel, I'm sure Elvis is definitely made. If there was like a way for him to make money at a funeral, I'm sure that's what they need to do. Like Elvis needs to have his own jukebox at a funeral home, because literally everything has been played here. Another one is what's the Bette Midler song? Is it the Wings? My wings. You are the wind beneath my wings. Right? That one is played a lot. Another one would be I Did It My Way. I've heard that a
Yeah.
ton, Frank, and that one's great. But the problem with that one is it's very long. And Freebird, I have heard Freebird a ton here at the funeral.
Isn't it like 30 minutes long?
It is, and it's like literally when you think about the funeral, it's like, okay, it's going to be sick, because most pastors will have like a little thing where they'll say, and they'll always think for some reason Freebird's 2 minutes, and I'm like, okay, well here goes the funeral.
Yeah, it's like you're downstairs vacuuming after the funeral and that song's still
Yeah, it's
playing.
like, oh gosh almighty. But yeah, I would say those are the
Okay.
most played, Elvis especially, and Vincent Gill. I can only imagine. That song gets played a ton here. But what is my favorite song used at a funeral? I really do like I Did It My Way, because I think it's a very, like, especially for a punk rocker, I think it's very punk that he did that. Like, I don't care how you wanted me to live my life. I was going to do it my way. And not only knowing Frank Sinatra's life, I watched a couple of his documentaries on him. He did it his way. He kind of was kind of his only man. So for me, that's always a fun one to come across. I'm waiting for one family to be in Ida, Michigan, be like, hey, I know you're a punk rocker, so Dad was a punk rocker too, so we're gonna play all these punk songs.
Doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen a lot. We do get a lot of like rock. So like, you get like people will bring in their Journey and Chicago albums or Queen. But I haven't had a punk rocker yet. But I will let you know. What about, how does everybody feel out there? What is a certain song you've heard at a funeral or would want at your funeral? Maybe give us a playlist. Give us a playlist of the 3 songs, because most funerals have 3 songs. It's just how it usually goes. Tell us a playlist of your 3 songs, and Dr. Nick and I will get back with you if we agree with your 3 songs, or maybe we disagree with your 3 songs.
Or maybe we'll come out with a 3 EP of those 3 songs of us covering them.
Absolutely. And you could do that while you review us and give us some likes, send us to your friends, talk about it all over. But you can email us at our Gmail at letstalkaboutdeathpod@gmail.com. We love these questions. Keep them coming in. I like this one specifically for me, Benny Boy. It's kind of being more popular around here, Dr. Nick.
I'm sorry, I fell asleep. Were you talking?
I was. And thank you all for listening. We had fun talking about music. We love music, so keep rocking and rolling out there.
Keep
We're gonna
listening
rock
to
this
us. Keep
town,
liking
rock
us.
it
And
inside out.
we leave you with that.
Yes. Because if you're not talking about death,
Then you're not living.